I first noticed him during the Veterans Hall Memorial Dinner. He sat alone at the last table by the kitchen doors, gray hoodie, jeans, boots so worn the leather was splitting near the toes. Everyone else had ribbons and medals flashing under the chandelier lights. He had none. The older crowd ignored him. The younger guys, newly discharged, loud and proud, gave him suspicious glances. Some even whispered, "Stolen valor." He didn't flinch. Just sat there quietly, sipping coffee, eyes scanning the room like he'd seen it all 1,000 times. I was helping organize the event, so I had a reason to approach him. I figured maybe he was someone's guest. "You with one of the veterans, sir?" I asked politely. He looked up at me with clear steel gray eyes. "No. Just came to sit." It wasn't rude. It was just, final. Like that was all there was to it. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. There was something about him, his posture, the way he watched every door, every person. Not like a lost man trying to fit in. Like a man used to being invisible on purpose. That's when Petty Officer Kyle Briggs walked in. A decorated Navy SEAL, Kyle was on the guest list as our keynote speaker. People clapped as he entered, shaking hands, posing for quick selfies. But the second his eyes fell on the man at the back table, he stopped mid-step. His face changed, serious, then pale. And then, loud enough for the whole room to hear, he said, "Ghost Viper. That you?" Every fork and knife in the hall froze. The man didn't answer. He just gave a slow, deliberate nod. And everything changed. You could feel the air thicken, conversation stopped mid-sentence, laughter cut short like someone hit mute on the whole building. Kyle Briggs wasn't just a SEAL, he was the kind that had stories written about him in books with names redacted. Yet here he was, approaching the quiet man like a rookie standing at attention. "Sir," Kyle said again, voice lower now. "We thought you were gone." The man didn't rise. He just motioned to the empty seat across from him. Kyle sat without hesitation. The rest of us watched like it was a movie we weren't supposed to be seeing. People started whispering again. But this time, the tone had shifted. Not suspicion, respect. Fear. Awe. I walked over slowly, unsure if I was interrupting something I shouldn't. I heard Kyle say, "They said you vanished after Cunner. No trace. No debrief. Nothing." The man finally spoke again. "That was the idea." Kyle leaned back in his chair like someone just punched the wind out of him. "I never told anyone your code name. I didn't even think it was real. They used to say you could sneak into a compound without breathing. You saved half my team in '09. We never got to thank you." He looked around the room and then said loudly, "This man's the reason I'm alive. You all owe him more than you know." Heads started to turn. Chairs squeaked. Some stood. Others looked ashamed. But the man, Ghost Viper, just raised one hand. "Sit. I'm not here for that." Kyle turned to me. "What's your name?" "Jason," I said, stunned. He nodded at me. "Jason, you're standing next to a legend the Pentagon buried so deep they forgot they ever wrote his file. You're looking at a man who walked away from medals on purpose. Ask him why." But before I could open my mouth, Ghost Viper stood up and said calmly, "Because medals don't stop nightmares." And he walked out of the room. Nobody moved for a solid 10 seconds after he left. Not even Kyle. Then the murmurs started up again, but softer now. The kind of whispers people use in churches or during funerals, quiet, reverent. I followed him out. He hadn't gone far. Just down the hallway to the old coat rack. He was slipping on a faded field jacket, the kind issued 2 wars ago. "Why did you come?" I asked, keeping my voice respectful. He didn't answer right away. Just adjusted his collar and looked out the window toward the empty parking lot. Finally, he said, I wanted to see if the world still existed. If the people I left behind were still breathing. I stood beside him, unsure what to say. Ghost Viper, is that really what they called you? He let out the ghost of a laugh. Yeah. That's what they called me when they didn't know my real name. Worked better that way. What is your real name? He looked at me for the first time with something other than distance in his eyes. That part doesn't matter. Before I could respond, Kyle caught up to us. He handed him something wrapped in a worn cloth, small, round. I kept it, Kyle said. In case I ever saw you again. Ghost Viper unwrapped it. Inside was a single challenge coin. No unit insignia. Just a deep-etched serpent with wings. He stared at it in silence. That was the only time I saw a commander drop his radio, Kyle said quietly. When they realized you weren't dead, you were just gone. Voluntarily. I wasn't made for parades, Ghost Viper replied. I was made for silence. Kyle nodded. But silence doesn't mean forgotten. The old man tucked the coin away and stepped past both of us. I never wanted thanks. I just wanted to make sure someone still remembered why I did it. Kyle and I stood there as the door closed behind him. No medals. No ceremony. No spotlight. But now, we knew the code name. And we'd never forget it. The next morning, I couldn't shake it. I needed to know who he really was. Not just the code name, Ghost Viper, but the man beneath it. Kyle met me for coffee, already expecting the questions. He served in a unit so deep it doesn't officially exist, Kyle explained. You ever hear of the Night Files? I shook my head. Exactly, he said. Ghost Viper operated under protocols so classified, they burned the mission logs when he retired, if you can even call what he did retiring. No official discharge, no paperwork. Just, disappeared. Why would anyone live like that? Kyle looked me straight in the eye. Because he didn't do it for credit. He did it for the mission. For people like me. For people like you. I leaned back, absorbing it. Do you know his real name? Kyle hesitated, then nodded. I do. But I'll never say it out loud. That name belongs to the man he was before everything changed. Before the things he did to save this country erased the right to a normal life. Later that day, I walked back to the Veterans Hall. I found the folding chair he sat in, still tucked under the table near the kitchen. I reached down beneath the tablecloth, not expecting anything, and froze. Taped under the seat was a small, folded note. No medals. No headlines. No need. If you're reading this, keep watch. The quiet ones aren't always gone. GV, I stood there for a long time. No one clapped when he left. No trumpets. No salute. But now I understood, his absence was louder than any uniform ever could be. And somewhere out there, Ghost Viper was still watching. I didn't expect to hear from him again. Weeks passed. Life returned to normal, or at least, the version of normal that comes after brushing shoulders with a ghost. The Veterans Hall still buzzed with stories, but now every tale ended the same way, and then Ghost Viper nodded. He had become folklore overnight. A silent guardian people claimed to have spotted, on subways, bus stops, walking out of diners without finishing his coffee. No one knew for sure. Then, one morning, an envelope arrived at the hall. No return address. No stamps. Just my name in small, neat print. Inside was a single photo. It showed a younger version of him, kneeling in the desert, holding up a tattered flag. No face visible. Just the shadows of 3 others behind him. It wasn't staged. It was real. Raw. On the back, written in fine pencil, this is the only thing I kept. Burn it when you've understood it. GV, I didn't burn it. I framed it. It hangs quietly in the back office of the hall now, no plaque, no explanation. Just there for those who know where to look. And every now and then, someone will stop mid-sentence, stare at the photo, and whisper, "I think I served with him." I never say a word. Because that's how Ghost Viper would have wanted it. Not all legends wear medals. Some just leave footprints in silence, and let their name be carried by those they saved. It was nearly a year later when the power cut out during a storm at the hall. We were hosting a small, informal gathering that night, mostly new veterans, younger ones, fresh from overseas deployments. The lights flickered once, then darkness swallowed the room. Laughter turned into mild frustration, but nobody panicked. A few cell phone flashlights popped on. Then someone near the entrance said, "Who's that?" We turned. A figure stood just inside the doorway, drenched from the rain, hood low, boots caked in mud. For a split second, I thought it was a trick of the shadows. Then I saw the eyes. Steel gray. Unmistakable. Kyle was the first to move. No words, he just walked over and offered a towel. Ghost Viper took it, nodded once, and stepped fully inside. Still no ceremony. Still no name. But this time, something was different. He reached into his jacket and placed a worn notebook on the nearest table. "This doesn't go online," he said, voice low but clear. "This doesn't go to any museum. You read it, then you pass it to someone you trust. Then burn it." No one argued. He didn't stay long. No coffee. No small talk. But before he left, he looked around the room, the younger vets, the quiet ones in corners, the ones with thousand-yard stares, and said, "You're not alone. Don't let the silence fool you." And then he was gone again. We opened the notebook that night. Inside were names of soldiers saved from ambushes that were never reported, operations that officially never happened, and messages meant for the families of those who'd made the ultimate sacrifice without headlines or medals. Each page was a heartbeat. Each story, a ghost. And at the very end, he'd written, "Let them forget me. Just don't let them forget why we did it." We never did. Months after that stormy night, something strange started happening. Veterans across the country, quiet ones, the kind who usually slipped in and out of events unnoticed, began receiving small, unmarked envelopes. No return address. No explanation. Inside each was a single strip of cloth, black, with the outline of a serpent barely visible in faint silver thread. Some knew what it meant instantly. Others had to ask. But word spread quickly through the right channels. "It's from Ghost Viper." It wasn't official. It wasn't for decoration. But those who wore it stitched it under collars, behind lapels, inside boots. Hidden, like he always was. I asked Kyle one day how many of those symbols were out there. He gave a quiet smile. "More than you think. He's not building a network. He's waking up the ones who've been forgotten." The notebook. It had already made its way across 6 states. Each reader left a handwritten note tucked into the back, then passed it on. Stories kept being added, not just about Ghost Viper, but about the people he saved, the ones who went unrecognized, the lives bought in silence. It was like he had sparked a hidden flame in the dark. And then one day, a package arrived addressed to me. Inside was an old cassette tape. No label. No markings. I found an old player in the hall's basement, dusted it off, and pressed play. Static. Then breathing. Then a voice, calm, steady, familiar. "If you're hearing this, it means I trust you. Not because of a title. Not because of a badge. But because you listened when no one else did. They say legends are born in battle. That's not true. They're born in silence. In choices no one sees. In the lives you don't take credit for saving. When I'm gone, don't chase ghosts. Just remember the quiet ones. And keep watch. Click. Tape ends. I sat there for a long time, rewinding it, listening again. The man with no medals had just passed on the torch. After the tape, everything shifted. It wasn't just the hall anymore, it was the people. Quiet nods were exchanged between strangers at airports, VA clinics, and bus stations. Some called it a myth. Others called it a movement. But the ones who knew didn't call it anything at all. One afternoon, a retired intelligence officer named Dana Harper showed up at our door. She was in her 60s, sharp-eyed, with a cane she didn't really need. She asked to see the notebook. "How did you hear about it?" I asked cautiously. She reached into her coat and showed me the same black cloth with the serpent insignia, worn and frayed. 25 years ago, she said, I worked on a case involving a missing recon team in Turkmenistan. The Pentagon redacted everything. Files vanished. I thought it was sabotage. Then her eyes turned hard. But now I know, he cleaned it up to protect them. She flipped through the notebook, her hand shaking just slightly. "Do you understand what this is?" she asked me. "I think so." "No," she said. "You don't." She pointed to a symbol on the last page, barely etched in pencil, an overlapping triangle and circle. Only a handful of people ever saw this. It marks operations denied by every known branch. The people involved? Erased. Then she looked at me. Ghost Viper didn't disappear. He was erased on purpose, by mutual agreement. Why? She closed the notebook and handed it back carefully. Because sometimes, to protect everything, you become no one. That night, Kyle and I held a private gathering. Just a few of us, those who'd received the cloth. We didn't speak much. Just passed around the tape. The notebook. The photo. No social media. No news coverage. And yet, somehow, more people kept showing up. Not to be seen. But to remember. It was just after midnight when the alert came in. Not from the police. Not from the military. From one of ours. A quiet message sent through an encrypted channel that only a few of us monitored anymore, buried under layers of obsolescence and dust. But when the signal came through, we all knew what it meant. Locked, code, shadow vigil location, former outpost, North Fork Ridge message, he's watching. It's not over. North Fork Ridge was long decommissioned, an old Cold War installation turned into forest. Nothing official ever happened there. Just rumors. But the few of us who'd followed the notebook, passed the cloth, listened to the tape, we knew better. Kyle and I drove through the night, no questions asked. We weren't the only ones. By dawn, 8 vehicles were parked in a loose perimeter, unmarked, dusty, silent. In the center of the clearing stood an old antenna tower and a single steel door, half buried in moss and time. The door had been pried open. Inside, nothing. Just dirt, rust, and collapsed cables. But someone had been there, recently. There was a piece of cloth nailed to the concrete wall. Same serpent insignia. But this one was different. Red stitching across the bottom, last run in progress. Kyle turned to me. He's not done. He's still out there. Still working. Dana Harper showed up minutes later. She didn't speak at first, just stood in the doorway, face unreadable. Then she said quietly, this was his fallback spot. If he came here, it means he had one last job. One no one else could take. We asked her what kind of job. She shook her head. The kind that never gets reported. The kind that doesn't end with an extraction team. We looked around. No signs of struggle. No debris. Just the symbol, and a trail of footprints leading out into the woods. And that's when I knew, Ghost Viper hadn't returned to be remembered. He came back because someone needed him. And as always, he didn't wait for permission. The trail led deep into the woods. No markers, no signs, just the faint pressure of boots that moved with the kind of precision only ghosts leave behind. We followed in silence. Kyle, Dana, and I, no radios, no drones, no tech. Just instinct and the overwhelming sense that we weren't searching for him. We were following him. After 2 hours, the trail stopped. Not faded, stopped. Like he'd vanished mid-step. We scanned the trees, the rocks, the silence. And then we saw it. A small metal box, half buried under pine needles, wired with a timed lock and a single message etched into the top: "Do not open. Pass on. Final trace." Dana knelt beside it, running her fingers over the engraving like it was sacred. "This isn't a cache," she said softly. "It's a closure." We brought it back to the hall, quietly, without announcement. For weeks, it sat in the back room beneath the framed photo. No one dared open it. We all understood. It wasn't for us. It was for the next one. For whoever came after. For the one who would need the story, not the glory. Eventually, the box was gone. We didn't see who took it. No footage. No fingerprints. Just a folded black cloth left in its place with a new word embroidered beneath the serpent: "Remember." That night, Kyle poured a glass of bourbon, placed it on the windowsill, and said aloud to the empty air, "Wherever you are, mission understood." And so the legend lives on. No medals. No parades. No name. Just a legacy passed in whispers. And a codename spoken only by those who understand what silence truly means. Ghost Viper was never meant to be known. Only felt. Only remembered. Only followed, by the quiet ones still watching from the dark.